The stars shifted on the viewing screen as the massive fleet dropped out of. Faster than light travel, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, watching the familiar yellow sun grow brighter in the distance. After 2,000 years, humanity had finally come home. All ships reporting in, Captain, said Lieutenant Torres from his station. 1,000 vessels accounted for, no damage from the jump. Sarah nodded but said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the small blue planet. The distant Earth she had only seen it in old pictures and videos, passed down through 100 generations. Her great-great-grandmother, 50 times removed, had been born there, had walked on real soil under a real sky. Captain, we're picking up strain signals from Earth, Torres said, his voice uncertain. It's not natural. There's technology down there. Sarah's heart sank. They had expected a dead world. The old record said Earth was dying when humanity left. The air was poisoned, the oceans were acid, and nothing could grow. That was why 10 million people had packed themselves into colony ships and left their home behind. What kind of technology? Sarah asked. Advanced, very advanced. I'm detecting power sources all over the planet. Cities, ships in orbit. Tor looked up from his screen, confusion on his face. Captain, I think someone else lives there now. The bridge fell silent. 2,000 years of traveling through the dark, 2,000 years of fighting to survive on frozen worlds and desert planets, 2,000 years of hoping that one day they could return home. And now, someone else was living in their house. Open all channel, Sarah said quietly. Broadcast on every frequency. She walked to the center of the bridge and began to speak. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human fleet. We are the children of Earth, returning after a long absence. We come in peace. We wish to speak with whoever now calls our home world there. On they waited. Minutes passed in silence. Then the screen flickered to life. The face that appeared was not human. It was beautiful in a strange way, made of crystal that caught the light and split it into rainbows. The being's eyes glowed with a soft purple light. I am Empress Shiva of the Vel Dominion, the being said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. This world is the sacred birthplace of my people. We evolved here. We built our civilization here. This is our world by right of origin. Sarah felt cold with respect. Empress, this world was ours first. We were born here. We left because we had no choice, but we have always dreamed of coming home. The crystal face showed no emotion. That is unfortunate. The Vel have lived here for 100,000 of your years. We know nothing of your kind. Perhaps you are mistaken about your origins. We are not mistaken, Sarah said firmly. We have records, DNA samples, soil from Earth still preserved in our archives. This is our world, Empress. Shiva was quiet for a moment, then she spoke, and her words were final. The Velk do not share. We have defended this world from 17 invasions. Our weapons are the strongest in this region of space. I will give you one chance. Leave now and live, stay and you will be destroyed. The screen went dark. Sarah stood very still. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders. She thought about the 10 million souls spread across the 1,000 ships of the fleet, people who had been born in the dark between the stars, children who had never seen a real sunrise, old people who had spent their whole lives dreaming of a home they would never see. She thought about her own childhood on the generation ship. The recycled air that always tasted stale, the artificial lights that never quite felt like real sun, the cramped spaces where everyone lived on top of each other, the drills for hull breaches and radiation leaks, the fear that lived in everyone's hearts that maybe, just maybe, they would die in the dark before reaching Earth. Lieutenant Torres, Sarah said, her voice steady, bring the fleet to full alert, deploy scouts to map their defenses, send word to all ship captains, we're not leaving. Captain Torres said carefully, they said they've defended against 17 invasions, their weapons I don't care. Sarah interrupted, do you know what? We've survived, we crossed the dead zone. Where space itself was broken, we fought off the machine swarms at Kepler 442. We survived the plague that killed 1,000,000 people in 1 year. We lost 3 entire ships to a black hole and kept going. We adapted to radiation that should have killed us. We learned to live on worlds with no air and no water. She turned to face her crew. We didn't survive 2,000 years in hell just to turn around at the doorstep of heaven. This is our home. We were born there. We bled for the right to return, and no one, no matter how powerful, is going to take that away from us. Torres straightened in his chair. Yes, Captain, sending orders now. Sarah looked back at Earth, glowing blue and green in the dark. Somewhere down there, the Velk were preparing their weapons. They thought humanity was just another weak species to brush aside. They were about to learn what 2,000 years of suffering had forged. The Velk fleet appeared on the scanners like a swarm of angry insects, 200 warships, each one gleaming with crystal technology that bent light in beautiful, deadly patterns. They moved toward the 3 human scout ships near Mars with perfect precision. They're beautiful, whispered Lieutenant Harris from the scout ship Wanderer. She had never seen alien warships before. They looked like flying cathedrals made of diamond and light. All scouts, this is perseverance. Captain Chen's voice came through the calm. Hold position. Let them make the first move. Your captain, shouldn't we retreat? Harris asked. 3 small ships against 200. It seemed like suicide. Negative. Hold position. Trust the plan. Harris swallowed hard and gripped her controls. Through the window she could see Mars, the red planet where humans had first tried to build a new home before the long exodus. Now Velk structures covered its surface too. The enemy fleet stopped at weapons range. For a moment everything was still. Then space lit up like a sun. Plasma lances shot out from the Velk ships, bright blue beams of superheated matter, each one hot enough to melt a mountain. They slammed into the Wanderer and the other 2 scout ships. Harris closed her eyes, waiting for death, but it didn't come. When she opened her eyes, she saw the plasma spreading across an invisible bubble around her ship. The deadly beams broke apart like water hitting a wall. The temperature inside the Wanderer didn't even rise. Shields holding at 98%, reported her engineer, his voice full of wonder. They're barely touching us. More weapons fired, quantum torpedoes that could tear holes in reality itself, missiles that turned matter into pure energy. Wave after wave of destruction that had conquered 17 star systems. All of it broke harmlessly against the human shields. This is impossible, came a voice over the open channel. A Vel commander, his crystal voice cracking with disbelief. Nothing survives our first strike. Nothing. Captain Chen's voice was cold when she answered. You've never fought anyone who Cross the dead zone, you've never fought anyone who had to shield their ships from radiation that would kill you. In seconds, your weapons are impressive. But we've seen worse, much worse, fire. Everything, the Vel commander screamed. Destroy them, the alien fleet unleashed its full power. The space around the 3 scout ships became a hell of energy and fire. Any other species would have been vaporized. The human shields glowed bright but held firm. Captain, Harris said quietly into her calm. They're not even scratching us, should we now? Chen said. The human fleet didn't have fancy energy weapons, no plasma lances or quantum torpedoes. What they had was simple chunks of metal, accelerated to 30% of light speed. Perseverance and the other capital ships launched their kinetic kill vehicles. They were just tungsten rods, lie dense, metal shaped into darts, but at relativistic speeds they became the most dangerous weapons in existence. The Vel saw them coming and tried to shield. Their energy barriers were designed to stop other energy weapons. They were perfect for that purpose. They were useless against solid matter moving at 100,000 km/s. The first Velk ship exploded so fast it seemed to simply vanish. One moment it was there, beautiful and deadly. The next moment it was a cloud of glittering dust, then another and another. The kinetic rounds punched through the Velk ships like bullets through paper. Their shields might as well have not been there. Each impact released energy equal to a nuclear bomb. Ships broke apart. Debris clouds expanded in silent fury. Harris watched in horror and awe as the enemy fleet died. It took 14 minutes. 200 Velk warships reduced to scrap and vapor. The human ships hadn't even needed to move. Cease fire, Chen ordered. Let any survivors retreat. There were no survivors. The comm channels were full of chatter, human crews talking excitedly, nervously. Many of them had never seen real combat before. They had trained for it, prepared for it, but seeing it was different. Sarah Chen sat in her captain's chair, feeling nothing but tired. Her tactical officer was young, barely 30, and he looked sick. They didn't stand a chance, he whispered. We just erased them. They fired first. Chen reminded him. They had every opportunity to talk, to share. They chose war, but still listen to me, Chen said, her voice hard. My grandmother told me stories about the Exodus, about ships that broke down and couldn't be saved, about children who died from radiation before they were 5 years old, about parents who threw themselves out of airlocks so there would be more air for everyone else. We paid for this homecoming in blood and tears. I won't apologize for protecting what's ours. Message came through from Earth. Empress Shiva's face appeared on the screen. Again, this time her glowing eyes showed emotion, fear. How? She demanded. Our weapons have never failed before. How did you survive? Because we had to. Chen said simply. When you have no choice but to survive, you learn to be very good at it. This isn't over, Shiva said. Earth has defenses you cannot imagine, weapons given to us by the architects themselves, the oldest and most powerful civilization in the galaxy. You may have won this battle, but you will not win the war. The screen went dark. Chen looked at her tactical display. Earth was activating something. Massive power sources coming online all over the planet. Orbital platforms rising from hidden bays. Weapons that made the Velk fleet look like toys. All ships, she broadcast to the fleet. Prepare for round 2. And remember, we didn't come this far to fail. Now, around her, the human fleet formed up into defensive patterns, learned from 1,000 battles across 2,000 years, patterns that had kept them alive when everything else tried to kill them. The Velk were about to learn that their store-bought weapons were nothing compared to the innovations of desperation. The orbital platforms were ancient and terrible. They hung in space around Earth like a crown of thorns, each one bristling with weapons that could crack moons. The Vel had bought them from the architects at enormous cost. They were meant to make Earth undefeatable. Young tactician Crest watched from the command center deep beneath the surface. Her crystal body reflected the light from 100 screens, each one showing a different part of the battle space. She had studied warfare her entire life, and she knew what these weapons could do. Activating antimatter mines, announced the weapons officer. Thousands of small devices appeared throughout the space around Earth. Each one contained a tiny amount of antimatter held in magnetic bottles. When they detected a ship, they would detonate, releasing energy that could vaporize anything nearby. The human fleet advanced steadily toward Earth. They didn't hesitate. They didn't slow down. The first mines detonated, brilliant flashes of light that would have blinded anyone watching. Enough energy to destroy a city released in a fraction of a second. The human ship sailed through the explosions without slowing. Impossible. Breath the weapons officer. Those mines should have destroyed them. Crest leaned forward, watching closely. She could see now the human ships weren't tanking the explosions. They were surrounded by clouds of tiny objects too small to see individually. Millions of micro drones, each one programmed to intercept and destroy threats. The antimatter explosions were caught by these drones, which sacrificed themselves to protect the ships. Before each ship could be harmed, the drones were replaced by new ones. It was like watching a living shield that healed itself. Activate graviton beams, Empress Shiva commanded from her throne. The platforms fired again. This time, the weapons bent space itself. They created gravity wells strong enough to crush a ship into a ball of compressed metal. The Vel had used these weapons to destroy asteroid fortresses. The beam struck the human ships. Space warped around them, trying to squeeze them flat. The human ships shuddered. Their hulls creaked for a moment. Crest thought it had worked. Then the ships adjusted. They released some kind of counter field that pushed back against the gravity. The space around them rippled and stabilized. How Shiva demanded, nothing can resist graviton beams. Crest was beginning to understand. She pulled up the human fleet travel route on her screen. Emperors, look at this. Their path took them through the Kellner sector. So the Kellner sector contains 3 neutron stars and a black hole. The gravity there is. Crest paused, amazed. They flew through that. They had to develop shielding just to survive the journey. Then we'll use the architect weapons, Shiva said. Her voice was desperate. Now the reality shears, nothing survives those, the most expensive weapons. Activated reality sharing devices that existed partially outside normal space. They didn't just destroy matter, they removed it from existence entirely, cutting holes in the fabric of reality itself. Purple light swept across the human fleet. Ships began to fade, being erased from existence. But then something strange happened. The Human ships started to glow with the same purple light. They were matching the frequency somehow, refusing to be pulled out of reality. Crest pulled up more data on human travels. Her eyes widened. They crossed the veil. Every Velk in the command center turned to look at her. The dimensional rift in Sector 339. Crest continued. It's marked on all maps as impassable. Space itself is broken. There, they didn't go around it. They went through it. The Empress stared. No one goes through the veil. No one survives the veil. They did, Crest said quietly, and they learned how to navigate between dimensions to do it. The reality shears failed. The human ship solidified again, intact. All platforms fire at will. Shiva screamed. Everything, use everything. The orbital defense network unleashed total war. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, exotic weapons that twisted physics itself. The space around Earth became a storm of destruction that would have sterilized the planet if any of it had missed. The human fleet advanced through it all. Ships were damaged, some were destroyed. But they kept coming, replacing losses with reserves, adapting to each new threat. Crest watched their formation and noticed something that made her blood run cold. The human ships moved together with perfect coordination. When one ship was damaged, others covered it instantly. When a gap appeared in their formation, it was filled before the Vel could exploit it. They're linked, she said. Neural networks, they're fighting as one mind. She pulled up more data, hacking into intercepted human communications. What she found terrified her. The humans didn't just share tactical data, they shared thoughts, experiences, emotions. When they fought, they became a single organism with 1,000 bodies. The Velk fought as individuals, even with coordination. Each captain made their own decisions, followed their own instincts. The humans fought as one. Every ship knew what every other ship was thinking. Every crew member was part of one vast consciousness that spanned the entire fleet. Empress, Crest said, her voice shaking, we can't win this. They've spent 2,000 years surviving things we can't imagine. Every challenge made them stronger. Every loss made them more united. They're not just a fleet. They're a hive mind of survivors. Silence. Shiva rose from her throne. We have one more option. Summon the architects. If anyone can stop these creatures, it's them. Crest wanted to argue, but she was just a tactician. Shiva was the Empress. The communication went out, a message to the architects, begging for help, offering anything in return for aid against the human invasion. Outside, the human fleet had destroyed 70% of the orbital platforms. They were closing on Earth itself now, their weapons aimed at the cities below. But they weren't firing, they were waiting. Why don't they attack? The weapons officer asked. Crest looked at the tactical display. The humans had Earth at their mercy. They could bombard the planet right now, but they weren't, because they don't want to destroy it. She realized it's their home. They want it intact. A reply came from the architects. It was short. We are coming. In the command center, everyone cheered. The architects were the oldest civilization in the galaxy. They had technology that seemed like magic. If anyone could defeat the humans, it was them. Crest didn't cheer. She watched the human fleet and thought about what they had survived, about the dead zones and radiation storms, about the dimensional rifts and black holes, about 2,000 years of fighting to survive when everything tried to kill them. And she Wondered what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. They were about to find out. The ship that emerged from the wormhole was bigger than Earth's moon. It was made of something that looked like liquid silver, constantly flowing and reshaping itself. The architects had arrived. On the Perseverance, Captain Chen felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard stories about the architects. They were older than any other species in the galaxy. They had been building civilizations when Earth's sun was still forming. Captain Torres said nervously. They're hailing us in the Vel, put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was not really a voice. It was more like music or wind, or the feeling of standing at the edge of an ocean. It was a sound that touched the mind directly. I am the consensus of the architects, it said. We have heard the plea of the Vel. We have observed your conflict. Both of you will cease hostilities immediately. Empress Shiva's image appeared on a split screen. She looked relieved. Great architects, thank you for coming. These invaders seek to take our sacred home world. We ask for your aid in defending what is rightfully ours. The consensus turned its attention to Chen. Human captain, the Velk have inhabited this world for 100,000 years. Your claim is ancient and dubious. Leave now and we will not destroy you. Sarah Chen stood straight. No. Silence filled the void. The Empress looked shocked. No one refused the architects. You refuse our judgment, the consensus asked. There was something like curiosity in its voice. Yes, this world is ours by right of birth. We were born there. We left because we had no choice. We spent 2,000 years suffering and dying in the dark, dreaming of coming home. We earned the right to return, not through violence but through survival. And I don't care how old you are or how powerful. You're not taking that away from us. Then you choose extinction, the consensus said. The massive architect ship began to glow. When it attacked, Chen understood why the Velk had been so confident. The weapon manipulated time itself. The Perseverance began to age. Decades passed in seconds. The hull corroded. Systems failed. The crew felt years added to their bodies. Temporal shields. Now Chen ordered through gritted teeth, feeling her bones ache with sudden age. Engineers who had been preparing for this exact scenario activated the shields. The aging stopped, then reversed. The ship began to restore itself. Torres stared at his captain. Amazement. How did you know they'd use time weapons? Because we developed them first, Chen said. When we crossed the chrono anomaly near Betelgeuse, we had to learn to shield against time distortions. It was that or watch our ships rust to dust in minutes. The architect's ship seemed to pause, reconsidering. Then it attacked again. Differently, this time the human fleet began to fade, phasing out of normal reality. The architects were trying to shift them into a different dimension where they would be trapped forever. Human ships flickered, half in reality and half out, but they didn't disappear. Instead, they followed the phase shift. Their dimensional drives developed too. Cross the veil activated, they pursued the architect into the space between spaces. Impossible, the consensus said. And for the first time it sounded unsure. You can navigate, Clear's throat. The higher dimensions. We can navigate anywhere, Chen responded. We had to learn. Space between the stars isn't empty. It's full of things that want to kill you. Dimensional predators, reality storms, zones where physics stops. Working, we survived all of it. The architect tried a new attack, a direct assault on consciousness itself, trying to scramble the neural networks that linked the human crews together. The human fleet reeled, crew members grabbed their heads, crying out. The shared consciousness that connected them became a weapon against them as the pain multiplied across thousands of minds. But then something happened. Consciousness didn't break, it absorbed. The attack, thousands of minds working together, were stronger than one, even one as old as an architect. They processed the pain, distributed it, diluted it until it was manageable. Enough, the consensus said. The attack stopped. The architect's ship hung in space, its silver surface rippling with what might have been thought. You are remarkable, it finally said. We have existed for 500 million years. We evolved in a peaceful nursery of stars, where resources were plentiful and dangers were few. We became powerful through time and study, but you became powerful through suffering. The consensus paused, and when it spoke again, there was something like respect in its voice. You were forged in fire. Every challenge that should have killed you made you stronger instead. You adapted to radiation, to vacuum, to dimensional rifts, to time distortions. You learned to think as one while remaining individuals. You created weapons from desperation that we never imagined. You are the children of adversity, and you have earned your strength. Then you'll let us reclaim Earth? Chen asked, hardly daring to hope. No, the consensus said. I will give both of you a chance to prove your worth, because something is coming that threatens us all. The architect's ship projected an image into space. It showed a wave of darkness sweeping through the galaxy. Wherever it touched, stars went dark, planets were consumed, entire civilizations vanished. The scourge, the consensus said, entities from beyond reality. They feed on matter, energy, and life itself. We have known about them for 1,000,000 years. We have been preparing, but even we are not certain we can survive them. Empress Shiva stared at the projection in horror. How long until they reach us? They are already here, as if summoned by the words. Space itself began to tear. Holes opened in reality, and through them came the scourge. They looked like shadows that moved wrong, like holes in space that consumed light, like nightmares made solid. They numbered in the millions, and they swept toward Earth like a wave of darkness. This is your test, the consensus said. Whoever can defend Earth against the scourge will have earned the right to call it home. The Vel with their purchased weapons, or the humans with their earned strength. The architect's ship began to pull back, moving to a safe distance to observe. Wait, Shiva called out. You're leaving us to face this alone. If you cannot defend your claim, the consensus said, then you do not deserve it. The Velk fleet, what remained of it, pulled back to defensive positions around their cities. They powered up every weapon they had left, but Crest could see the fear on every face. The human fleet moved forward, placing themselves between Earth and the scourge. All ships, Captain Chen broadcast, her voice steady. This is what we trained for. This is what we've been preparing for since we left home 2,000 years ago. We're not running anymore. We're not hiding anymore. We're making our stand here at home, and nothing is getting through us. The scourge descended on the human fleet like a storm of darkness, and the final battle began. The scourge hit the human fleet like a tsunami of Darkness, they didn't move like normal. Ships, they phased in and out of. Reality, existing partially in several dimensions at once, they passed through. Shields as if they weren't there. Latching onto the hulls of ships and beginning to consume them. On the Perseverance, alarm screamed. The ship's hull was being eaten away. Molecule by molecule, shields are useless. Taurus shouted, "They're passing." Right through, Captain Chen watched. 3 human ships disappear, consumed entirely by the shadow creatures. Her jaw clenched. They hadn't come this far to lose now. Activate Protocol Omega, she ordered. Captain, that's never been tested in real combat, her chief engineer protested. We tested it on the edge of the Thanos void. It worked. There. It'll work now, do it. The engineer hesitated only a moment, then pressed the activation sequence. Throughout the fleet, every human ship powered up a weapon they had hoped never to use. The entropy cannons came online. They had been developed during humanity's darkest hour, when the generation ship Icarus had stumbled into a stellar phenomenon that shouldn't have existed, a region of space where the laws of thermodynamics were reversed, where everything aged to dust in minutes. Hundreds of thousands had died before the ship escaped, but human scientists had studied that horror. They had learned from it, and they had weaponized it. The cannons fired and reality screamed. Where the weapon struck, time accelerated to infinity. The heat death of the universe compressed into a single moment. The scourge entities that were hit aged trillions of years and seconds. They withered, faded, and ceased to exist. The shadow creatures pulled back, confused. For the first time in their invasion across the galaxy, they had encountered something that could hurt them, but there were so many of them. For every one destroyed, 10 more took its place. The human fleet was outnumbered millions to 1. We can't get them all, Torres said, watching the tactical display. There are too many. We don't have to get them all, Chen replied. We just have to hold the line until they realize we're not easy prey. Ships fell. The destroyer Valiant was consumed entirely. The cruiser Remember vanished into shadow. The carrier Holmes Hope broke apart, its death broadcast across the fleet. Shared consciousness. Every human felt those deaths. Every crew member experienced the final moments of their comrades. The pain was unbearable, but they didn't break. They had felt pain before. They had lost people before. Loss was an old companion to humanity. They kept fighting. Entropy cannons fired again and again. Space around Earth became a graveyard for the scourge, but still they came. From Earth, Tactician Crest watched in amazement. The Velk fleet had pulled back, unable to even touch the scourge. Their weapons passed through the shadow creatures uselessly, but the humans were actually hurting them, actually destroying them. How Empress Shiva whispered, watching the battle. Because they've faced worse, Crest said quietly. Look at their formation. They're not panicking, they're not breaking. They're doing what they've always done. They're surviving. The architect's ship hung at a distance, observing. The consensus watched with growing fascination as the humans fought. 30% of the fleet was gone. Now then 40%. The casualties were devastating, but the scourge were retreating. Not all of them, not even most of them, but the wave had stopped advancing. For the first time in their invasion across the galaxy, the scourge had encountered a force they couldn't simply overwhelm. They pulled back, regrouping, reassessing. Captain Chen, blood running from her nose from the strain of the shared consciousness, watched them go. Half her fleet was gone. Thousands of her people were dead, but Earth was safe. Cease fire, she ordered. Let them retreat. The darkness pulled back, flowing away from Earth like a tide going out. The Scourge weren't defeated, but they were deterred. They had learned that this planet was defended by something dangerous. Silence fell over the battlefield. Debris floated in space, the remains of human and Scourge alike. The architect's ship moved forward again. Remarkable, the consensus said. In all our long existence, we have never found a weapon that could harm the Scourge. We tried energy weapons, gravity manipulation, reality warping. Nothing worked, but you found their weakness, entropy, time itself. We learned by dying, Chen said quietly. Thousands of us died in that anomaly. But we studied their deaths. We learned from them. That's what we do. We adapt. The consensus was quiet for a long moment. Then we bow to you, children of Earth. We offer you alliance. Your weapons combined with our knowledge might be enough to stop the Scourge. Together we could save the galaxy. Chen looked at Earth, hanging beautiful and blue in the darkness. So close now, so close to home. And the Valk, she asked. The consensus turned its attention to the planet. They have lost the trial. Earth belongs to humanity. On the surface, Empress Shiva stood in her crystal palace, preparing for the end. She expected bombardment, invasion, death. Instead, a communication came from the human fleet. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screens. She looked tired, worn, but her eyes were kind. Empress Shiva, we know what it's like to lose a home. We spent 2,000 years homeless, wandering in the dark. We wouldn't wish that on anyone, Shiva said. Nothing, waiting for the terms of surrender. You have colony worlds, yes. Other planets where your people live. Yes, Shiva said quietly. 3 systems. They are small, less developed than Earth, but they are ours. Then go to them. Take your people, live in peace. We're taking Earth back, but we're not monsters. We won't make you homeless. Shiva stared. You're letting us go after everything. We remember what it's like to flee, Chen said, to carry everything you own onto ships and leave your home behind. We remember that pain. We won't inflict it on you unless you force our hand. Leave peacefully and you leave as friends. Force us to fight, and well, you've seen what we can do. 3 days later, the last Veil transport lifted off from Earth. Empress Shiva took one last look at the world where her species had evolved, and then they were gone. The human fleet descended to Earth. For the first time in 2,000 years, human feet touched Earth's soil. Children who had never seen a real sky looked up in wonder at the blue atmosphere. Old people wept, knowing they had lived to see home. Captain Sarah Chen stood on a hill overlooking what had once been called the Pacific Ocean. The architect consensus appeared beside her, its form shimmering in the air. Your species is unique, it said. You were shaped by hardship into something stronger than we could have engineered. The galaxy needs that strength now. Will help, Chen said, but Earth comes first. We're home now, and nobody's taking that away from us again. The first human child to be born on Earth in 2 millennia came into the world that night. They named her Hope. Above the planet, human and Velk ships patrolled together, new allies united against a common threat. The architects shared their knowledge, and humanity shared their weapons. The Scourge would return someday, but when? they did, they would find Earth defended by a species that had learned the greatest lesson of all: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and nothing could break those who refuse to surrender.